Welcome back, where we're continuing the saga of replacing the head gasket on this 3-liter V6 on this first generation Toyota 4Runner. In this video, we're going to be cleaning up the engine, cleaning the deck surface, and just generally making it look nicer so that we have everything ready to put the new cylinder heads on. Now, looking at the engine, you can see that I've stuffed shock towels down into all the cooling ports and oil ports, so that when I'm cleaning the deck surface with a razor blade, none of the little particles get down into the critical passages. I'll also put some towels in the cylinder pots there just so nothing falls in there as well.
Anywhere you go, give it on. Anywhere you say, anywhere.
Alright, so that is the deck surface cleaned up and the piston tops all cleaned up and the cylinder bores as cleaned as I can get them. Alright, so the next step here is to put some tape over the top of here so the rest of the cleaning I do doesn't accidentally get into the passages and inside of the cylinders themselves. And I'm also going to take off this crankshaft pulley. It's kind of a bear. It's probably not been off for a very long time, and I'm going to have to get the pullers out to probably get that thing off.
will go and who will stay?
This is ludicrous.
So we finally got the engine completely stripped down and ready to be cleaned. Now it just so happens that the folks from Super Clean reached out to me before this 4Runner mistake hit my garage, and they came to me saying, hey, would you like to try some of our cleaning products? And as someone who always has a nasty project in the garage, I said, sure, I'll give them a shot. And honestly, I've never really picked up any Super Clean products, because I always figured I'd go with things like brake parts cleaner or engine degreaser, or something that has a really strong aroma to it, and it seems like it works really well. It cuts through grease really well, but honestly, I don't know if it's always the best choice to go with those kind of cleaners, especially because they're not very good for your health. These are made of biodegradable ingredients, so they're a lot better for you and the environment. And we're here to see if they are in fact just as good as some of these other more aggressive cleaners, such as Brake Clean. So right here we have the foaming version of their cleaning product. Here we have their standard degreaser right there. And then we have the aerosol version of this product. These are all something you just kind of spray on a greasy area and then you rinse it off with water. And we'll just see how they work. Let's get to it. So now that I've cleaned the deck surface with a razor blade, gotten all the major gasket material off of there, I'm now gonna finish it off with some fine grit sandpaper. Now to do this, I will need to remove these locating dowels in the deck surface there. And after that, I will put some sandpaper on a sanding block and take this down to a nice even finish. For sanding duties, I'm going to be using this large sanding block I picked up at Home Depot. It's made by 3M. And then some 180 grit wet dry sanding paper that fits nicely in the sanding block. Now the Toyota service bulletin for this head gasket repair says to use 160 grit sandpaper. I couldn't find any of that, so I decided to go to a finer grit instead of a coarser grit and just moved up to 180. Should be just fine. I'm going to lubricate the sanding surface with WD-40 so it goes a bit smoother and so the grit doesn't get airborne and get trapped into places it shouldn't be. So there we are, the engine's looking much better and ready to accept new head gaskets. Now there are some things I'd like to point out here for anyone who might be considering doing this sort of job that maybe has never done it before. And they're things that I learned as I went through here. And the first one is pulling out the dowel pins. I would not recommend pulling those out. As it turns out, you really don't need to do that to get a nice clean surface finish. It's just a ton of extra work and stressful to do because they're always tight and hard to get out of there, and it takes a lot of time, so just skip that part. And secondly, it's always good practice to check the flatness of the deck of the engine, but you can only do that if you have a means of checking it, meaning you have a precision straight edge. And one of those costs at least $100 to get into a decent one, and all that's gonna do is tell you whether or not your block is somewhat warped. If you find out the news is that the block is somewhat warped, you have to say, well, what am I going to do with that information? Am I actually going to pull the engine out to have this taken down to a machine shop and have it decked? Or am I just going to leave it alone? In my case, there was going to be no difference whether or not the block is somewhat warped or not, because this car's got to get out of my garage, just get put back together, and it'll work fine regardless of whatever the deck surface is like. I definitely know that it's best practice to check the deck for warping, but there's really nothing I can do with that information. So I just did the best I could, and we'll reassemble it, and I think everything will be fine regardless. In the next video, we'll take a look at all the new parts we have in order to reassemble this thing properly. So until then, we'll see you guys again next time.